Welcome to the NAMB Podcast, where we bring you the voices that drive the mortgage industry. Join dynamic hosts Ginger Bell and Matt Shields as they dive into bold conversations with top experts, industry leaders, and change makers from across the country. From insider insights to game-changing trends, this is your front row seat to what's happening right now in the world of home finance.
Well, hi there. Welcome to another episode of the NAMB Podcast. And before we get started, I want to say Happy New Year. This is our first episode for 2026. So Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, I'm so excited for everything that we have planned in 2026. And of course, I want to introduce my co-host, my partner in crime, Matt Shields. So Happy New Year, Matt.
Happy New Year, Ginger. Thank you for the introduction.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm going to let you do the honors, my friend, and introduce our special guest for the very first episode of 2026.
Absolutely. And we have two very special guests with us today. We have NAMB President Kimber White, and we have President Elect Michael Farrell here. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for being here with us today.
Oh, thanks for having us. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. 2025 was a great year, a lot for 2026. So excited to have you here to kind of kick off 2026 with our podcast, and just can't wait to hear what you guys have for us today.
Yeah. And so starting off with that, 2025 was a great year. Kimber, you just did in the last podcast for 2025 kind of a recap and some insight. But really, you guys are kicking off 2026 just with a bang, because there's a lot we need to pay attention to as far as what's happening on Capitol Hill. And you recently, in December, did a visit to DC, and I know you met with several committees, several chairs. So if you don't mind, can we just do kind of a quick recap as far as what that trip was about?
Yeah, Mike and I did a whirlwind day trip up to Washington, D.C., 12,500 steps.
Nice.
And so basically we started off, we worked with the House Financial Services. Of course, they've just put out a bill last month, their own housing bill that they put out. So we're excited about that, which is part of the Roads Act that's from the Senate side. So we got to talk to the Senate Banking and Finance Democrat and Republican side for their housing side, and discussed issues that we thought were important, which was LLPAs. We talked about affordable housing. It was amazing to me that some of them thought that one of them actually made a remark that FHA was for the poor people, because they didn't realize that, that they thought it was for poor people. That was really surprising to me. And they didn't understand the difference between wholesale and retail. That was another question that was brought up to us, which, so I think that one thing I took out of that meeting more than anything else is that so many of us go to these people and talk and lobby at them and discuss and think that they know. I think we're not doing a job as the mortgage broker industry, and when we go to the Hill, and I think as an industry as a whole, the housing, we don't educate them.
Right.
And I think we assume, because they're senators, congressmen in the trenches, that they know the basics of what it is, and they don't. It was very obvious to me. Mike and I up there for the day was like, huh? So we did meet with the Senate banking, both sides, Democrat and Republican, Tim Scott, who's the chair, and Elizabeth Warren, who is the vice chair, as they call it, the chair for the Democratic minority side, and met with their staff, and they really wanted us to be a part of the conversation. We told them we'd like to be a part of the conversation. That you have NAR, you have NPA, but NAMB does 25% of the mortgages, and we really have a small business. So we took a lot of that. We're going to our initiatives. Of course, the housing initiatives is this year is NAMB Now, and we know that those initiatives are to do affordable housing. So we met with them. We also met with Senator Warnock's office on legislation, which Mike, I'm going to let you go into that because you dive into appraisals and CRN, and you know what that is. So go into that, because One thing I will bring up, when we did meet with Warnock's office, they did not think that the broker or the paying for an appraisal was a big deal because they thought an appraisal was $85. So,
Right.
so that was my concern when this bill went out, that we're all in favor of overall. Let Mike explain a little more. Was great, except my remarks were, but the brokers now have to own the appraisal. And when I explained it was $650 to $1,000, it's like, oh. So he goes, we need to look back and go to some of the stuff and maybe redline it and have y'all a part of it. Mike, I think you explain a bit more what's going on.
Yeah, thank you, Kimber. And the biggest thing on the appraisal side is the UAD 3.6 is coming out. It's actually in limited production right now. I've actually seen a couple of appraisals on it. But NAMB has a seat on the Appraisal Foundation Advisory Council, as well as on the Board of Trustees as partners. So we're very entrenched and involved in the UAD 3.6, which does have a component on it in a section for a reconsideration of value. And that's been the talk for the last couple years as regards to FHA came out with a reconsideration of value if there was a component of bias. That was repealed with the new administration. But now it's coming back to a fold with the new UAD 3.6. But we keep coming back and saying, well, that's great. Reconsideration of value is not a second appraisal per se, but if it gets to the point of second appraisal, who's going to pay for it? Is that the consumer that's going to pay for that upon request, or is that the lender that's going to pay for that, or are they going to push that back to an expense that the broker has to pay? So those are things that we're heavily involved in to make sure that we've got clarity. And what Kimber just rightfully said is that participation and engagement is the key of this, being involved in those discussions with Warnock's office, as well as any other legislation that's coming up, being on the forefront of those discussions. And I think we really hammered in with our appointment last month, that is, in DC, sitting down and listening to what their understanding of our industry is, and then educating them as to, well, there's a little bit of a difference there of what your opinion is.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that came back to that is when you look at it, it was, I don't think they really understood the rebuttal process of the appraisal, even though it was detailed. And that was a good example that I said, yeah, but if the borrower feels that they've been wrong and the underwriter goes, okay, we can do that, or if it came in under value, then the borrower can't, as we all know, for rebuttal, they can't pay for an appraisal unless it's absolutely that Fannie Mae absolutely says that it is bad. Then no, we can't. Then that doesn't happen. But other than that, no, there's no reason they can't pay for it. But they wanted us. Okay, so Ginger, your appraisal, you just don't like it, and it doesn't look good, and it came in a little bit of value, and you're going now where you want to do appraisal, and I'm going to have to pay for it. The brokers should not have that onus. There has to be some tweaking, as I said, in the language. We're all for, as of course, the reason this started is disparate impact and the fact that appraisals were being basically, I call them redlined for certain areas, and that we all know that there are appraisers that are less than great when it comes to doing appraisals. I use some examples, but there should be some guidelines, and there really wasn't any guidelines on there. So,
and the key is not just value, reconsideration of value, quality of work. It's not just about the evaluation; it's the quality, it's the cost, things of that nature. Is the consumer getting a quality product? Is the broker, is the lender getting a quality product?
So to clarify for our listeners, and this is one of those things. Again, it's so important to support our industry. For those who are new to the industry or been in the industry for a long time, it's the education that happens, not just for new people coming in or for new products, but the education that happens on the legislative side. So whether even at the state level or at the federal level, that is so important. And so having a seat at the table, if you will, to be able to help to educate these legislators And there's a lot that goes into that. And I know the first time that I went lobbying in DC, I had no idea the conversations that happened and the meetings with, even state senators. I'm from Oregon. And so meeting with our state offices for our state senators and things like that is important. So the meetings that you're having, you're being invited into those meetings and conversations. Who does those meetings? Who sets up those meetings for NAMB?
We have our lobbyist. Our lobbyist sets
Okay,
up.
let's talk about that. Because I think a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that NAMB is not just a group that has, a conference once a year in Vegas.
No.
But there's a lot that goes on, and the lobbyist is one of the things that speaks on behalf of not just NAMB, but the industry, and especially for the focus of the business for NAMB, which is our mortgage brokers, right?
Yeah, NAMB has a full-time lobbyist, the Williams Group, one of the top lobbyists in DC, and they do our lobbying for us. They find we know what our legislative agendas are, and we also work with other groups. We work with NBA, we work with NAREP, we work with Home, we work with NAPMW. Some of those groups don't have lobbyists, but some of them do, and we come together on issues that affect our housing industry. But NAMB is working all year long. I made a remark recently that there was a piece of legislation and there was two parts to it. And I said, well, you don't have this legislation, but if you're going to hamper doing loans and mortgages, you're not able to do your mortgages, then why are we doing this legislation? And so, everyone, for some reason, Ginger, and I've said this to you, from 1819 through 22, 23, we were back in the show me the money days. And it was about money, 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 money. Everyone makes money. We all have to make money. But I come from the crash days, 40 years in this business of 2008, when nobody had any money to make because we've been regulated almost out of the business. And Dodd-Frank come along, and we were almost regulated out of the business. Had NAMB not been there in 2010, 11, and I'll go back to this. And there were people sleeping in bathtubs. This is no story. This is the fact. To go lobby against what was getting ready to happen. On the Hill, and there was no money to do it, but NAMB people took out of their own pockets and went and did this to fight this legislation, including one of our past presidents, Joe Falk, who was there helping fight for us. So the fact of the matter is, these are the things that people, like you said, that haven't been around a long time don't understand. It's not just about making money every day and how to grow your business, sell your business, get mentoring. All that's important, but there's another side, and that's the side that don't see it, knowing that we're constantly there fighting for you and making things better, making sure that we have a seat at the table and making sure that we're fairly represented and that our industry is still going to continue because, it's always something. And there's always, the thing is, they're not trying to legislate us out. There's unintended consequences.
Right.
And I will chime in on that in regards to it never ends. It's 24/7. Just perfect example of this weekend, Friday night with our lobbyist, and something came up that we needed to address it. And Kimber and the team is 11 o'clock, 11:30 at 12:06 a.m. in the morning, finally get the disposition out of something that needed to be responded to by 5 o'clock on Monday. So the team is constantly aware and moving as to what's going on, and making sure that we've got a responsive team that's addressing those things so that we're not missing any opportunities.
And the big thing, the CFPB, we met with them. We met with the deputy director of the CFPB. It was very important to me to sit down with the deputy director of the CFPB. Now, the joke of the story is people must know the CFPB going away. Well, legally, because of Congress and the act of Congress, it can't be closed. But in all essence, the CFPB is gone away, is going away. It's still going to have its guidance, it's still going to have its guidelines, but there is no signage, there is no anything that shows where the CFPB.
Yeah, but I think it's important to know too, and this is one of those things, even though the CFPB may not be in its full capacity as we know it when it first started.
Right.
The laws that were put into place during the time frame of the CFP, the Dodd-Frank Act, the Raspatillo reform, and all those things are still in place. So even though we may not have the oversight that we had, the states still have that oversight. And so I think that's important to remember as well. And one of those things, I know, Mike, you and I have had this conversation, why at a state level, it's so important to get involved. And we're seeing a lot of our state associations coming back, and I absolutely love
Yes.
that. So, Mike, and I know you have a big initiative for that for 2026. So can you share a little bit of that as well?
Absolutely. Our state bridges are priority number one in regards to building those bridges of communication and getting the state leaders involved and engaged on our committees. There are boots on the ground, eyes and ears of what's going on with their state. NAMB doesn't get involved in state-specific legislation, but if it starts in one state, it starts to build. Look at what happened, with North Carolina and Ohio. States start to get together. But the key is that our states are represented when we have issues from a national perspective, such as when we had, I think Kimber was just talking about Warnock's bill. We needed additional sign-ons and sponsors to that, and we were able to obtain additional sponsors through an association event down in the Carolinas that actually garnered an additional sponsor. So it all works in sync. It all works under the umbrella, and those folks are very important of our state leaders.
Right, I agree with Mike 100%. Going back to the CFPB, why those rules, Ginger, are still going to be in place under Dodd-Frank? That's the bad part too. We went up there talking about LO comp because we need to make sure the LO comp rules stay. Because if we roll back, first thing, Ginger just said, it goes back to the states. But if CFPB goes away without going away, there's a difference. But if you start ending up depending upon your state regulators or your state going back, you're going to have stricter, you're going to have less strict. We were asking for direction to make sure before they just kind of like, okay, we're just going to be here with rules where they are. Give direction and some guidance as to where these rules are going to be, who's going to be overseeing what they are. And also, we didn't want LO comp to roll back, because if you roll back, what is it? Do you want to stay where it is or roll it back to what it was under Dodd-Frank, which would make it draconian for the mortgage brokers? We wanted to make sure the LO comp didn't roll back. So what we were there, as Ginger said, Ginger, it's not to CFPB's not going away with the rules, but who's going to oversee those?
Exactly.
Who's going to actually make sure they're implemented? You can't put this onus on the state 100% because it's going to be such a, you've got 50 states, you've got different regulators. You've got stronger regulators in California and New York. You've got Oregon. You've got different interpretations of the law. Who is going to oversight? You need to make sure that you have some guidance. That's one of the things we asked for, and they asked us to put a letter to the acting director about that. So that's what NAMB's going to do in the future. So,
and it's going to be an ongoing conversation too. And I know a very big initiative for 2026, because within Dodd-Frank and that LO comp rule, there was a big area for misinterpretation. There was no clarity to it. And so as an industry, and it's not that anything has really been, clarified within the law, but we do need to make sure that it stays intact, number one. And so those conversations that you're having is important. And I think it's important for our listeners to understand not only the fact that you all are lobbying, but what they need to pay attention to, because there may be times where there may be a call to action where we put a NAMB call to action out. And so tell me what happens, when there is a call to action, when does that facilitate, and what do people need to do when they see that?
Right.
Okay. It's like last year with the triggers bill that we had. NAMB knew what was coming up, the timelines. We did the call to action. We implemented all of our tools in regards to email call to action, mobile, the NAMB app call to action, and we had a very, very strong response. But we also, in those state leadership calls, made them aware of what's coming on deck so that they can prepare, from a state level to get boots on the ground to respond. But the call to actions starts from the lobbyist to our GA team to our board and our EC, and then out to the field with the messaging.
I love it. And so, pay attention to those, obviously getting involved. We're going to continue this conversation many times, but we like
Ginger, if they don't have the NAMB app on their phone, that is the first thing to do is download the NAMB app so that you're getting those alerts and those call to actions.
And I'll say, we're going to continue the conversation. That's been my initiative this year at the Ontario presidency, was housing initiatives, affordability, and being in the conversation. And Mike and I have committed to go up to DC together and to at least try to be there on every other basis, because people need to know that we're there, what we're doing. But the biggest thing, I'm going to say this: if you're a member, you have to contribute. And I don't say maybe, you have to contribute to PAC. I don't care if it's $10. I don't care if it's $5. Fact of the matter is, money talks. Mike and I had the opportunity to be at a fundraiser last month. There was Senator John Thune. Senator John Thune was there. Senator Joni Ernst was there. There was a Tim Scott's holiday party. We were there because we participated and we had to. It's money. Money, as we all know, drives the politics in DC. And to have a seat at the table, you have to have money. And it's unfortunate to say that, but that's the way politics works. And we need every member to give something to PAC. And I'm sure we can put something in there about it, but there's importance of just putting your money where your mouth is. I know a lot of people can't do what I've done for, I've been in this business 40 years, and out of those 40 years, 15 of it has been legislative advocacy and giving back. But just $10, $5, every dollar adds.
We cannot get a seat at the table if we can't get in the door. That's right. The key. And that's what's going to get us in the door is supporting those that are friendly to our industry, that are willing to let us come in the door, sit at the table, and allow us to educate each other, because it is a dual education back and forth.
And NAMB is nonpartisan. I think that's what we have to understand too. You have to work across both sides of the aisle and table, and it's not, Democrat, it's not Republican. When you go to that table, you have to go to that table with everyone. You have to make sure you have a seat for everyone. So NAMB is nonpartisan. And that's something that people need to understand, is that we are, because legislation doesn't pass with one or the other. The legislation passes only with bipartisan efforts. And we are that organization that's going to make sure we are at the table for all people. Like I said, we met with the Senate, banking, and finance, and housing on both sides. And the same thing we're doing with the House, same thing we're doing with the, same thing we do for anything, and we're respected for that.
Yeah, I love it. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm delighted to have you as our very first guest for 2026, and we're excited for what the year brings. We'll make sure and include the links for the PAC, also for the app, the NAMB app, which is phenomenal if you're not using it. And then, of course, if you're not a member, to become a member. We recently started our NAMB Hive Now Facebook group, so we'll make sure and include that. So get involved, stay up to date. And thank you so much. Thank you for the time that you give. Thank you for all that you do, your education, your expertise, all of that. And we truly appreciate it.
Thank you. And of course, I'm not sure the first, I think we have NAMB Focus to throughout the year, 15th through 17th. So that's exciting too, to kick your year off and grow your business in Orlando.
Absolutely. Yeah. NAMB Focus is in Orlando, which I know, Matt and Mike, that's a good for you. Get out of.
It's cold here today.
It was 3 degrees this morning.
Yeah, it's cold here today. No, thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. And pulling the curtain back a little bit and going to advocate for us. And, both of you guys still, you're producers. You originate loans, and still take the time to go do that for us. Is just, thank you so much. That's such a burden to be able to travel and do this and do that and take phone calls. And you guys are just leading the way and making it all work. So just thank you for everything.
Thank you to Matt and Ginger. You guys are getting the message out. Matt with the NAMB YP Young Professionals. You guys are doing a phenomenal job. Just we appreciate all that you're doing, because as Kimber and I, saying the board says, we don't express all that we're doing enough. And that's why we need you folks to just help us get the message out. But thank you for all that you do.
Yeah, you're both doing great putting the messaging out there. We appreciate it because sometimes we get tied up in the hamster wheel of just doing. We don't put the message out. Mike and I was sitting at dinner the first night, and he was texting, and I was on the phone, and we look up at each other. Mike says, and he just grins. He goes, "Isn't it something that we have to multitask? And here we are doing our business and having to do NAMB's business." He goes, "It just really is a balancing act." And I thought it was like, you know what? I don't think of that enough. But when he said that, it's so true that you're having to still continue your business because we're producing and because we help our industry. So, it is a balancing act.
Well, we're grateful you're good at multitasking.
And
thank you. Well, thank you so much. And make sure to tune in to our NAMB podcast. We have a new episode every single week. And we look forward to bringing more great podcasts and information just like this one. So happy New Year. Happy 2026.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to the NAMB Podcast, brought to you by the National Association of Mortgage Brokers. For more episodes, resources, and guest interviews, visit nambpodcast.com. Don't forget to follow, share, and subscribe.